Happy Thanksgiving week, everybody. This is Drew Allen, your Millennial Minister of Truth. Did you hear about this one? The latest bright idea from the Brain Trust, this time from Eric Swalwell. It's almost like these Democrats try to outdo each other with who's the stupidest person in the Democrat Party. But Eric Swalwell, he wants you to vote by phone. I mean, I got to tell you, someone who lives in California, judge me as you like. You live here. Why do you choose to live there? But these new candidates that are running for governor are making Gavin Newsom look attractive somehow. So that's how bad it gets. You've got Katie Porter. You got Eric Swalwell now, who's throwing his hat in the governor's race, and he's gone on TV and he wants you to vote by phone, right? The party that wants to protect and defend democracy, that's all about free and fair elections, they want to vote by phone. I mean, this is from, Eric Swalwell, America's leading expert on trusting the wrong person, including a certain Chinese spy named Fang Fang, you might remember. So that's his idea, vote by phone, because nothing screams secure elections, right? Like using the same device that, loses service when you stand behind a shrub. But Swalwell, he wants to, I guess perform the most important civic duty in the republic on the same device that the U.S. government uses to spy on you. Run it through a battery-dying, cracked screen, Chinese manufactured rectangle that, autocorrect can't even trust to spell, constitutional government without turning into consensual gravy or something like that. I mean, if you had these experiences on your iPhone or posting on X with the autocorrect. So, I can imagine it like this, it's like, getting those TikTok voters out, hey, swipe up if you want to vote against Trump, vote down if you want to vote for the Democrat candidate. And I cannot even imagine the butt voting that would become a new thing. You could tap the wrong thing and suddenly you voted for the Green Party. Ted sits down. Oops. Oh, look, honey, I accidentally voted for the Marxist because my ass hit the, confirm button. So a whole revolution started by somebody's left butt cheek. But, Swalwell is saying he's going to, this is going to make voting easier. And robbing a bank is easier if the bank just hands you the money, Eric. But ease isn't the goal, champ. It's security. The jokes about this could just go on and on and on. Sorry, folks. The election has been postponed because Verizon is down. We can't certify the election yet because, the Californians had a rolling blackout and their phones died at 2 p.m. But it's just amazing. The same people that told us, they spent 8 years, I guess, screaming that, Russia hacked everything from, your Facebook memes to your microwave. And now they want to put the entire election, at least Eric Swalwell wants to put the entire election on technology that gets hacked when you click the wrong, cat video. It's just astonishing. But, Swalwell's basically saying, let's why don't we mix, national security with Candy Crush, and we'll hope for the best. That's what we need. Modern politics meets brain damage with these Democrats these days. But you got to give credit where credit's due. This idea is so bad. It's so stupid. Honestly, it's so hilariously reckless that it could only come from a guy who trusted a Chinese spy named Fang Fang. I want to play this clip for you of Eric Swalwell making the announcement on TV, and now he's defending himself. Well, I'm really over the target now. If people are coming at me for this idea, it must be a great idea. Here we go.
I want us to be able to vote by phone. I think every Californian vote by phone. Yeah, if we can do our taxes, do our make our healthcare appointments, make essentially do your banking online, you should be able to vote by phone. Make it safe. Make
it safe. If you spend any time on the phone talking to your grandma, well, we should be able to also vote by phone. This guy has no logic whatsoever. But that's not the worst of it. he's also out there. Got one more clip I want to play for you of Eric Swalwell, who wants to be governor of California, who it's amazing so he's running for governor. I'll just play the clip and then I'll comment. Listen to this.
California has been struggling with a housing crisis for years now. That housing crisis has since spread to much of the country. In Congress, you have largely focused on what I would refer to as demand-side solutions, basically giving people more money so that they can bid on housing. Why not focus more on getting more housing built on the supply side? Or maybe another way I could ask this is, what do you think is responsible, or who do you think is responsible for how difficult it is to get housing built in your state?
Well, that's exactly what I'm going to do, is get it built faster. On day one, I'm going to declare a cost crisis for the state. And what the governor has already done in the Palisades and Altadena, I'm going to do across the state, which is I'm going to require every agency to approve within 90 days every outstanding application for housing so that we can expedite the housing that comes online. In California, as you probably know, the average age for a first-time home buyer is 40 years old. That's crazy. You should be, if we're the fourth largest economy in the world, we should be a state where you can take your first job, have your first kid, and buy your first home in the same decade. And that's exactly the approach I'm going to take.
Yeah, and yet he won't criticize any of the Democrats who run the state. He won't criticize Gavin Newsom. Now, he lies so much there, one, about how he's going to expedite through this crisis management or crisis announcement or whatever to get these, approvals for homes and whatnot rushed through. And yet that's what Gavin Newsom promised to do, and none of that has happened. No new building has happened in the Pacific Palisades. People are still living in temporary housing. They can't move into the neighborhoods. So none of that happened. It was a lie from the beginning. So here he is, coming in as a Democrat that wants to be governor. He's praising Newsom and what he's done. They're asking him, what's responsible for this? Will you change your approach? No, he's not going to do that. I mean, it's funny. He's actually running against Democrats. California, by the way, California is one of, if not the least unaffordable places to live. I mean, I know because I live in California. And he's out there saying, yeah, I'm going to make this state the American dream. This is what we're talking about nationally here. Hey, yeah, you should be able to buy a home, and homes are unaffordable. They're most unaffordable here in California. How are you going to do that, Eric Swalwell? He doesn't provide any solutions whatsoever because he's lying. He's like Comey Mamdani coming out. Comey Mamdani, now he's asking for everybody's money. Well, I need your money. I need more money. Give me your money. But it's just astonishing. So effectively, he's running against Newsom and the Democrat Party because obviously those policies aren't working, and yet he's not going to change a single policy. I mean, I'm very serious. If you are a Democrat and you fall for this, I don't know what that says about your IQ. I guess you don't have two brain cells to rub together, kind of like Eric Swalwell, who looks inbred, who looks like a Neanderthal, and now he sounds like a Neanderthal. Perhaps he always has. Perhaps he always says. I want to talk a little bit more about this Seditious Six. I think it's a great name that Pete Hegseth gave them, the Seditious Six. There's just, in one sense, Donald Trump showed his brilliance again, his ability to outmaneuver the left. Because he sends out a social media post, stating factually, effectively, that the penalty for sedition, the penalty for treason, is death. That's an accurate statement. And it forced the media and all of these Seditious Six Democrats to go on TV and make this a segment all week long. And none of them could defend themselves. All of them were asked repeatedly, can you name one illegal order that Donald Trump is talking about? And not a single one of these people could name an illegal order that exists. So they're basically incriminating themselves on national television. And it's happening because Donald Trump put out the post and they felt a need to respond to it because they have Trump derangement syndrome. They don't have control over their emotions. They don't have control over their strategy. They just have to go out there and attack Trump all the time, all day long. Now, first off, I want to explain something. And all of these people who are former military, CIA, know this. They know this to be true. So, the defense, and they could make a defense, if this was to go to court for Mark Kelly or something like that, Well, we said they shouldn't obey illegal orders. Now, we know what the subtext is there. They're calling for effectively insurrection. They're calling for a coup. And they're absolutely sowing division and chaos. And they're setting the stage for the so-called coup. Now, I want to tell you something that every Democrat screeching about refusing Trump's illegal orders conveniently has left out. The United States military, and I saw Pete Hegseth put out a post about this, and he's absolutely right. We already have a sophisticated, rigid system for dealing with quote-unquote illegal orders. It's been in place for over 70 years. This is not new. This isn't special. And it certainly isn't something that Adam Schiff discovered while doom scrolling on his iPhone. Our troops are trained on day one in something called the Nuremberg Principle, for example. You obey lawful orders. You refuse unlawful ones. And just following orders is not a defense. Every single service member learns this before they even fire their first rifle. They get, it's called LOAC training, ROE training. They get JAG briefings, IG protocols, chain of command escalation. There's all these things in place. Entire legal departments are dedicated to this very thing in the military. And you think a 4-star general whose command and men in combat needs MSNBC, or now it's called MS Now, or whatever it's called, to explain, hey, don't commit war crimes? That's your defense? So this entire narrative, Democrats going around saying, Trump's won, the military, now they have to refuse illegal orders, presuming that, and this is what they do because Trump, to the Democrats and the left, is an illegal president. That's what we've been saying. What we're seeing right now is the Democrats refusing again to accept the election results. Donald Trump was duly elected. If you don't like Trump, okay. Well, get your act together, get some policies in place, and get ready to win the next election. But this is why the Democrat claims of insurrection and everything else are so mute. They're meaningless because they have questioned the election results every time since like 2001. And what separates the Democrats from Republicans is that when Democrats come in like they have again now, when a Republican wins, when Trump has won, is they continue to try to subvert the will of the American people. They will not let Trump govern. Donald Trump was elected in the Democrat process that they claim to be protecting, but they won't accept it. So this is pure propaganda. This is not about law. It's about sabotaging the commander-in-chief. And that's it. Period. It's preemptive sedition. I guess that's a good name. It's preemptive sedition. And it's dressed up as, protecting democracy. Because there are airtight regimens in place. They all know this, to stop illegal orders from any president, Republican or Democrat. But Democrats don't care about that. They're planting fear. They're normalizing this idea again that Trump is a criminal before he even gives an order. And they're trying to turn the military into an opposition force. And that is the actual real legitimate danger. This isn't about illegal orders. This is about delegitimizing Trump's authority before he even uses it. And they have the gall to call him a threat to democracy. I mean, can you imagine if under the Obama administration, you've gotten a bunch of Republicans together that went on video and put together a video. And by the way, this was scripted. It was handed out to them. This was highly orchestrated. It was planned. Because Ruben Gallego, who is the Arizona, I guess he's a senator. I think he's a senator. Yes, he's a senator from Arizona. He's a Democrat. He's the guy who served his wife divorce papers while she was giving birth to their child because he's already banging the next one that he married. That's who these people are. And Ruben Gallego was like, well, they wanted me to do it, but by the time they got me the script, I didn't have the time. So, this is the real threat. The Democrats, again, as usual, a political party, the only political party telling the military which leaders they should and shouldn't obey. And the founders would call it what it is, sedition, plain and simple. And the American people, I'm telling you, they better wake up. Because this narrative is not just dishonest, it's dangerous. It's the same narrative that resulted in an assassination attempt, two actually, of Trump. It's the same narrative. It's the same dangerous rhetoric that ultimately got Charlie Kirk assassinated as well. But I want to play Mark Kelly here. I've got a couple clips of him. I don't have these two labeled to see which one, but well, firstly, Mark Kelly, he had the audacity to bring up the name Charlie Kirk. Is it related to him now? These people have no shame. Listen to this.
Just a friendly reminder that we are a country of laws. And by the way, I don't think there's anything more American or patriotic than standing with the Constitution. We're a country of laws. If anybody in the chain of command, anybody asks you to do something that's illegal, not only should you not do it, you're actually required not to do it. You have to follow legal orders. You are not to follow illegal orders. It was pretty basic. And the president's first instinct is to politicize this, to threaten political violence on members of the United States Congress. On the heels, I mean, it's just 2 months ago that Charlie Kirk was assassinated, and he talked about political violence, and now his instinct is to call for execution.
Yeah, and you know,
I have no tolerance for this gaslighting anymore. Democrats have called for violence against Republicans forever. You can go down the long list from Rand Paul's broken ribs by a Democrat neighbor. You can go back to Steve Scalise and the congressional Republicans being shot up by a Bernie Sanders supporter who belonged to hate Trump groups and parroted the talking points of the left. You can look at transgender shooters whose manifestos read like Barack Obama's speeches or Joe Biden's speeches, or an MSNBC panel or CNN panel talking every night. Donald Trump, Charlie Kirk. The list goes on and on and on. And those are all politically motivated assassinations. You can look at the attempted assassination of Brett Kavanaugh, Supreme Court Justice, and his entire family by someone who turned out to be trans, who came from California all the way up to Maryland, I believe, which is where his house was, and was caught and apprehended before he could carry out the attack. And he was upset over the overturning of Roe v. Wade. Time and time again, this happens. And it's not the same. There's context to what Donald Trump was saying. There's context to what we're talking about. And at the end of the day, too, the quote-unquote right is not a violent political movement. They try and lump neo-Nazis in, that have bar fights in with conservatives, which have nothing to do with neo-Nazis. But the left and the far left, fascism, the root of that is socialism. Communism, the root is socialism. That's your left. Fascism's called far right. But underneath it is socialism, which is what the Democrats support. So I'm tired of them trying to take advantage of ignorant and indoctrinated people with these lies. This guy talks about the importance of following the law. We just saw 4 years of the law being blatantly violated time and time again. The open border, 10 million plus illegals coming into this country. These people side with criminals over victims time and time again. They care nothing about the American citizen. You have the auto pen administration of Joe Biden, where he wasn't even signing off on anything that came out of his administration. It was people around him that were using the auto pen to do it. And these people have the audacity to lecture us about this. Him to bring up Charlie, Charlie Kirk was just assassinated. Yes, by who, Mark Kelly? What was the circumstance of that? They double down on their rhetoric that is getting conservative leaders and Republicans shot at and killed. They don't look in the mirror. They don't have any introspection. They don't reflect. They don't say, hey, maybe we should tone down the rhetoric. No, they go on after 2 attempts on Trump's life, after Charlie Kirk's been assassinated, and they go and put together a video saying, if Trump gives you an illegal order, don't follow it. And then he goes on TV and says, well, it was clear what we're saying. If you follow it. Yeah, exactly. That already exists. So what you're doing is you are setting the groundwork. Now, here's Mark Kelly again. Listen to him being asked what illegal orders he's talking about. You know, if you're going to make a video about how the military shouldn't follow illegal orders, well, you would think that these people would be able to name some illegal orders that they're concerned about.
When you and your colleagues made that video, were there specific, potentially illegal orders that you were thinking about that were the sort of precipitating cause for you guys to get together and do that?
Here's the thing, Rachel. You don't want to wait for your kid to get hit by a car before you tell them to look both ways.
Oh, okay. You know, we don't like Trump. He hasn't done anything. He hasn't issued any illegal orders, but, you know, we just want to let people know it's coming. If he does issue an illegal order, well, you know what you have to do, military, right? You have to march on Washington, D.C., I guess. It's amazing. Here's Jason Crow, one of the other individuals who was part of this Seditious Six. Listen to him. I'm not sure. Someone will have to comment and let me know if they can hear his audio. I couldn't hear his audio. But Jason Crow's asked the same thing about illegal orders. He starts to list them, and he's actually corrected by the host that says that's not true. He hasn't done any of that stuff. He hasn't done any of that stuff. It's wild. And now we've got the story I really want to get into and spend some time on explaining to you is this Clinton judge who is using a hyper-technical loophole to dismiss without prejudice. I'll explain what that means. Dismiss these cases against James Comey and Letitia James. But first, every major financial collapse has been preceded by the same 7 warning signs. Before the Great Depression, before the 1970s stagflation, before the crash of 2008. Now, all 7 of those are flashing red again for the first time in over 15 years. American Alternative Assets just released a free report that is called the Bellwether Signal. And it breaks down each of these signals and shows how to protect your retirement before the next wave hits. It's in times of uncertainty, gold has always been the ultimate safe haven. It held strong in 2008. It surged during the inflation crisis of the 70s, and it remains one of the few assets not tied to political manipulation or central bank policy. So you can find out why central banks are buying it in record amounts and how you can too by calling 855-803-GOLD, or you can visit cloutgold.com and get your free copy of the Bellwether Signal. That's 855-803-GOLD or cloutgold.com. Learn the signs, protect your savings, make your move while you still can. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what happened with this Clinton judge. I want to give you context. I mean, you know, legal experts out there, some of them anticipated this would happen because we know how the deep state and the Democrats operate. We know how they use and abuse the judicial system time and time again. But let me give you the bottom line of this first. A Clinton judge, Judge Curry is the judge's name, used this loophole to save Comey and Letitia James while courts have bent, stretched, and reinvented the law to keep flimsy cases against Trump alive. So it's another double standard applied. One to Trump and Republicans and another to Democrats. When Democrats are the target, the system finds a technicality. When Trump is the target, the system invents a crime. And that is why Americans no longer trust the justice system. Because we can all see with our own eyes that the rules are not applied equally. Some people are miraculously above the law, and it's Democrats. So they apply these things politically. Now, I'll break down what really happened with this Halligan appointment and why this Clinton judge's decision to throw out the cases against Comey and James, well, it's pure partisan politics. So Judge Curry dismissed both of these prosecutions. Now, these prosecutions These cases can be refiled. It's not over. I'll get into that in a minute. But the judge dismissed both of these prosecutions by claiming that Lindsay Halligan, who is the interim U.S. attorney who brought the charges, was unlawfully appointed. And that ruling depends upon the most rigid and most extreme reading of the law. So look, this Lindsay Halligan, she was appointed acting U.S. attorney. She was not confirmed by the Senate after the removal of her predecessor, Eric Siebert. So he was not simpatico with the Trump administration. He was another one of these embedded saboteurs in the administration. So he resigned, and Lindsay Halligan was put in his place, totally legally. Now, here's where the quote-unquote problem comes up. So this judge is citing a federal statute. It's 28 U.S.C. 546. And this governs the appointment of interim U.S. attorneys when a vacancy arises. So a president has 120 days to appoint an official while awaiting a Senate-confirmed replacement. So Siebert had already used that 120-day period. And after that, the district court gets a crack at appointing the acting U.S. attorney. So specifically listen to the verbiage of the statute. This is the relevant one. If an appointment expires under subsection C2, that's the 120-day appointment, the district court for such district may appoint a United States attorney to serve until the vacancy is filled. So the Clinton judge twisted that into, after 120 days, DOJ, Department of Justice, loses all power forever, which of course is absurd. That's not what the statute says. And other federal courts have ruled the exact opposite, that if the court doesn't act, the attorney general can keep filling the role. So prosecutions don't collapse. But Judge Curry, of course, being a Clinton judge, chose the one interpretation that benefited Comey and Letitia James. Now, even if Halligan's appointment wasn't perfect, there is a Supreme Court principle called the de facto officer doctrine. And this says that if someone is acting publicly in an official role, as Halligan was, their actions still stand. Courts use this all the time to prevent chaos. And Curry just ignored it completely. So, you know, again, just to simplify for people out there, you have a Clinton-appointed judge who chose the interpretation of the law that protected Comey and Letitia James. It wasn't a legal necessity. It was a choice. And it was a choice that erased these prosecutions, and it shielded powerful Democrats, and it ensured that, you know, Comey may not ever be charged again, but hopefully that's not the case. And like I said, Jonathan Turley, plenty of experts saw this coming. They said, look, I mean, this is, I'll call it a loophole, but, you know, this is the loophole they're going to use to get rid of these cases. And so there's definitely criticism that can be leveled at the Trump administration about how this stuff has been handled or mishandled. Because it shouldn't come as a surprise that the Democrats are going to exploit every, you know, legal maneuver or possibility within their hands to prevent him from governing, to prevent accountability from coming. But you have to look at how Donald Trump was treated. So this is the Democrat side of the justice system, right? A technicality, and that's what this was, a technicality gets inflated into a get-out-of-jail-free card. Now, remember, the decision to toss these cases, at least temporarily right now, before they're refiled, they weren't tossed because there wasn't a crime committed. They were tossed over this technicality. But when Trump is the target, judges take the exact opposite approach, don't they? You know, the left invents novel legal theories that everyone says are wrong, and those are still acceptable. You get unprecedented criminal charges. Those are allowed. Statutory gaps become flexible. Remember what they did in the state of New York. They gave, you know, a 1-year suspension of, you know, the statute of limitations so that E. Jean Carroll could bring her ridiculous case against Trump claiming that he raped her. And then the court in a civil trial didn't even vote that he raped her. They downgraded it to battery because her accusations were so flimsy without any evidence, but they still got Trump. And then you had, maybe most famously, you had, well, both Letitia James and Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg. They adopted these, that you can call them novel legal theories, which means they're trash, they're garbage, to go after Trump in New York. I mean, Bragg revived a dead misdemeanor charge and converted it into a multi-count felony indictment. And experts across the board denounced this as raw weaponization of the legal process. But they proceeded, didn't they? Trump is the only American ever charged with inflating business values when the banks weren't even defrauded and the banks never even complained. He's the only American charged with conspiracy to defraud the United States for contesting an election, something Democrats did in 2000, 2004, 2016. He's the only American charged with obstruction without an underlying crime. In other words, there's no crime, but he obstructed something. Judges didn't stop those cases, did they? No, they went full steam ahead. They didn't say this is unprecedented what's happening to Trump. They didn't say the statute doesn't fit. They didn't find a technicality. They said, let the trial proceed. So the judicial philosophy flips depending on the target. And this is dangerous. I mean, everything the Democrats have done are eroding and corroding our democracy. I mean, Letitia James, for example, literally campaigned on getting Trump. She said she'd sue him every day before she even took office. And the judges shrugged that off. But, you know, Comey's prosecutor has a paperwork issue. Boom. We got to get rid of this entire case. And, you know, I'm frustrated. You know, I mean, you can't change the behavior of these judges. This has been happening since Trump was first elected, you know, back in 2016 and started serving his term in January 20th, 2017. So we know who these people are. We know what they're going to do. And we need to, like, outmaneuver these people. So, you know, but look, the DOJ, maybe there needs to be a change there. I don't know. But there has to be accountability. And, you know, I mean, this is demoralizing stuff. I will say. It's demoralizing stuff. Because to have lived through everything they've done to Trump, starting with Trump-Russia collusion, which was completely made up by the Clinton campaign, and elevated into a coup, a soft coup by the Obama administration, working together to absolve Hillary Clinton of the email scandal, to stop looking into the Clinton Foundation pay for play. I mean, the levers of power had been stacked to protect powerful Democrats and to allow them to commit acts of criminality and get off the hook while inventing crimes to go after and persecute their political opponents. And, you know, I was thinking about ranking, you know what, but there's so much distraction out there, folks, about things that really don't matter. The infighting going on, you know, people need to stay focused. I promise to stay focused on this show. I will talk about the things that matter. Occasionally, I will point out, because maybe some of you are getting distracted or, you know, have some confusion. I want to keep things focused on what matters. What matters is reforming education, abolishing the Department of Education. What matters is the economy, which takes acts of Congress to fix. Closing the border and deporting the illegals that are here, that is a priority, one of the top priorities, if not the singular most important priority. This accountability, I think, is probably the top priority. There have to be repercussions for what these people have done to our country for the last 10 plus years. 9 years, 8 years, whatever it is. 10 years. 2016, almost 2026. A message has to be sent. But, the stakes are so high. They really are. Winning the election was so significant and important, but I've said time and time again, look, this is directed right at you at the Trump administration. This administration, look, this country is so much better off because Trump was reelected. And he does deserve way more credit than a lot of people want to give him. They think that he could snap his fingers and in less than a year he can fix everything. He can't. And much of the problem is not Trump. It's the fact that you have jelly-spined Republicans in Congress, both in the Senate and the House, who don't seem to understand the stakes, who don't seem to care about the future of the country, who don't even care about defeating the Democrats. They just want to stay in power. And frankly, the most inexplicable and indefensible latest example of cowardice comes from Marjorie Taylor Greene, who claims to be the exact opposite of a coward. She's so brave standing up to Trump. She was just reelected to her seat in the House last year in November. And she's betraying her constituents by resigning from her post. She hasn't even finished a full year. I mean, she's literally just been in, and she's, so these people voted for you, Marjorie Taylor Greene. And at this moment where you think it's difficult, even if you have problems with Trump, well, shouldn't you be in there fighting him? If that's your premise? Oh, I'm bold. I'm going to stick it to Trump. I'm going to go on CNN and MSNBC or MS Now or whatever it's called. I'm going to go on The View and I'm going to trash Republicans and trash Trump. And, you can tell everything you need to know about a person by who is praising them. And the left is in love with Marjorie Taylor Greene all of a sudden, which tells you she's not an ally of the conservative movement anymore. And, you can speculate. I spent some time in the last show talking about what happened with her. She's jealous. She's upset. She wanted to run for Senate because she's power hungry. And Donald Trump privately told her she wasn't going to win, so he wasn't going to back her Senate bid. And that set her off. And so now she's on the warpath. And look, I'm sick of career politicians. I mean, she's basically a career politician, although now she's cut it short. I mean, I wish there was more of that in D.C. I wish there were term limits on these people. It would solve many of the problems that we have with corruption in Washington, D.C. Not all, but it would definitely address some of them, some of the low-hanging fruit. But, this isn't the way. So I want to just get into this a little bit. I mean, MTG leaving, obviously this is a gift to Democrats, and her retirement is not some principled stand. I'm sorry. It's just not. It's a self-inflicted wound that hands Democrats exactly what they wanted without ever beating her at the ballot box. It's just a gift. And she built her brand on being this fighter who would never back down. This America First warrior who promised her voters she'd stay in the trenches no matter what, no matter how ugly it got. And then she walks right away. When Democrats, when Trump, I mean, this is not courage. And she's abandoning her constituents. That's my biggest problem, actually, I think. I have obviously personal issues with her and some of the things she said and doing because I'm a political strategist at the end of the day that has to prioritize and look at the big picture. But, I mean, she's betraying her voters. So, now her district, that seat's going to sit empty until the governor calls a special election. And so, that House district is not going to have representation for weeks. And we're going to be down another vote when we already have the slimmest majority in the House of Representatives. And, the thing about MTG is you know, I mean, I think she's a grifter and a fraud at this point. But that said, even with her disagreements with Trump that have surfaced relatively recently, I would say that the majority of the issues, you know, they agreed upon. So it's just so insane that looking at what's happening in the country right now and having this short 4 years to try and do as much as we can to fix and right this sinking ship, that she would just leave. So, you know, I guess at the end of the day, she didn't just retire. She's handing Democrats a victory. She has betrayed the people who trusted her, and she has opened the door for, you know, the establishment now to reclaim a solid, you know, what is considered a America First district. And it didn't end this fight. It didn't end because she lost anything. You know, it ended because she walked away. And so now we have a fight over who replaces her. We have, you know, I mean, how long are her voters going to go without anyone fighting for them at all? But, you know, Marjorie Taylor Greene, a portrait of courage. Portrait of courage. All right, let's see here. I wanted to play this clip of Zohran Mamdani. I just, none of these Democrats that are out there that are stoking the flames of division and hatred in this country believe the things they are saying. Trump is a fascist. Trump is Hitler. He's Mussolini. He's Stalin. He's a threat to democracy. And yet these very Democrats who utter those incendiary and untrue claims have no problem going and palling around with Donald Trump, yucking it up with him, meeting with him. Can you imagine going and taking a meeting with Adolf Hitler? Shaking his hand, smiling? What would you make of such a person? So Zohran Mamdani met with Trump in the Oval Office not that long ago. And a lot of people were upset with Trump. Whoa, he's weak. He's meeting and joking with Mamdani. I thought it was brilliant because you need to look at it the other way as well. You have Mamdani who runs on Trump-proofing New York. Trump's a fascist. And then you have Donald Trump smiling and, you know, getting Zohran Mamdani to be very friendly with him. So what is the message? What does that image communicate about Mamdani? That he's a complete fraud and liar. Now watch him talking about his meeting with Trump now on TV.
In that press conference with President Trump, a reporter asked you whether you believe that President Trump is in fact a fascist, a word that you've used in the past. You were about to answer, then President Trump sort of jumped in and he said, quote, "That's okay, you can just say yes. It's easier than explaining it." So, Mr. Mayor-elect, just to be very clear, do you think that President Trump is a fascist?
And after President Trump said that, I said yes. And
so you do.
And that's something that I've said in the past. I say it today. And I think what I appreciated about the conversation that I had with the president was that we were not shy about the places of disagreement, about the politics that has brought us to this moment. And we also wanted to focus on what it could look like to deliver on a shared analysis of an affordability crisis.
Oh, Donald Trump, I still claim he's a fascist, but, you know, we talked about these things we can agree upon, these things we can work on together. Man, New Yorkers really got the wool pulled over their eyes, I guess, there in New York. Now he's begging them for money, even the low, poor people, his you know, supporters who think that everything should be free and you can just tax your way out of it, you know, until, of course, you run out of somebody else's money. But there he is, Zohran Mamdani. Let me just see something. What's... This was a thematic. Because you're hearing all these Democrats, those accused of sedition, you know, talking about how dangerous Donald Trump is and so on and so forth. I want you to listen to this MS Now, formerly MSNBC, MS Now pundit, cheering lawless behavior.
My MVP of the week is all of the students who walked out in Charlotte this week in protest of ICE raids.
Remind us, because we didn't talk about it.
So
today.
Charlotte's Web is basically ICE, Department of Homeland Security's plan to arrest thousands of supposedly undocumented people in Charlotte. It has terrorized the city. It has shut down traffic. You have schools where 30–40% of the kids are not showing up. And these young people on their own, without politicians, without mom and dad, said, we're standing against this. We want our country to be better. And thousands of them walked out of their schools in protest to say, we don't want ICE here. In addition to the fact, and I won't say that I'm suggesting this behavior, but ICE agents have found that their tires are slashed. They have been found that they have been chased out of... Yes, they have been chased out of buildings, chased out of restaurants.
But that's dangerous behavior.
It is dangerous behavior, but it is a demonstration that the American public, when they're not being listened to, these are the options that they'll take. I hope this administration listens and pulls back these ICE...
Oh, I hope this administration listens. Hey, you know, you keep doing this illegal behavior, you know, and you might get your tires slashed. Your life might be threatened. These are the options, you know. If Trump doesn't become a Democrat, you know, you might find your tire. Now, I'm not encouraging that behavior, but, you know, this is the option that these people have. You see how they kind of slowly introduce this. Now, it's not that slow because we already had BLM. We have Antifa. We had them encouraging riots, burning down neighborhoods, many minority-owned businesses razed, plundered. 24 people killed in the BLM riots. And you had, you know, prominent Democrats, including Kamala Harris, saying they shouldn't stop. They should keep going because this is for social justice. That's right. Only in the Democrat philosophy is violence acceptable. You see how they justify it? And you have Mark Kelly having the audacity to invoke Charlie Kirk's name. Oh, I'm in danger, you know. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. And you know, the problem is we've got so many weak Republicans that they don't have the courage to simply call them out on it and speak the truth. You've got them busy attacking Trump on things that are absurd. Rand Paul being one example. You know, cartels are killing Americans every single day. They're not a sovereign nation. They're terror networks. That's what these cartels are. And every president for 40 years has used military force against non-state threats without a declaration of war. 40 years they've been doing this. And the only reason some people suddenly pretend that Trump can't, I'm talking about bombing these Venezuelan cartel boats in the ocean, because they don't actually want the cartels confronted. The Constitution, by the way, does not require a formal declaration of war for every use of force. That would be absurd and insane. And if that standard were true, then you would have Clinton strikes in Kosovo, Obama strikes in Libya, Biden strikes in Syria and Yemen, Reagan strikes on Gaddafi, Bush 41 strikes in Pan. All those would be unconstitutional, but now it's Trump. And no serious legal scholar believes that, by the way. The founders created a commander-in-chief, not a decorative mascot. And presidents have inherent authority to use limited targeted military force to protect American national security, especially against non-state violent actors operating outside traditional borders. And that's what's happening with these cartels. Now you can get into a broader conversation about what is Venezuela's involvement. Is there going to be some escalation over there? But that's not what we're talking about with these boats coming over that are being bombed. But you have Rand Paul who's opposing this because he wants a declaration of war. The cartels are not sovereign, even if they are propped up by the states from which they're coming. And they're coming to kill Americans. I do not want drug cartels coming freely across the ocean and landing here and killing American children or adults or whoever at all. That is an act of war against America. It results in death. And so we don't need to declare war on the Sinaloa cartel, for example, any more than we declared war on Al-Qaeda. You know, Obama didn't declare war on ISIS through Congress before drone striking them. Can you imagine? You've got this going on with terrorists out there, and you got to go to Congress every time and have a vote about. No, of course, that's insane. That would paralyze our ability to protect ourselves. And so I'm really tired of this purity test on the right that we apply to ourselves. You know, suddenly when Trump wants to defend Americans, the same people who ignored decades of unilateral action, they become these constitutional purists. And it's fake purity. You know, it's a Trump-only rule that's applied to him. And I'm just sick of it. I'm sick of the fighting. I'm sick of the distractions. I'm sick of the cowardice displayed by so many people on the right who supposedly worked so hard to get to this moment in our history to give us just the chance to save this country. And they want to fold like cheap lawn chairs again. I'm not doing that. I don't care. Bring your hatred, send me death threats. I don't care. I don't care. All right, I want to end with just a couple minutes of this. Look, it's Thanksgiving week upon us. And I sincerely wish all Americans out there the happiest of Thanksgivings. A chance to be grateful for this nation we live in. Even if it's imperfect, it's still the greatest ever. This country's not a mistake. It's a gift. It's a blessing. And I'm thankful for all of you. I can never tell you that enough. But I just want to play a couple minutes of this to bring you some joy and cheer.
The true story of Thanksgiving. The story of the Pilgrims begins in the early part of the 17th century. The Church of England under King James I was persecuting anyone and everyone who did not recognize its absolute civil and spiritual authority. Those who challenged ecclesiastical authority and those who believed strongly in freedom of worship were hunted down, imprisoned, and sometimes executed for their beliefs. A group of separatists first fled to Holland and established a community. After 11 years, about 40 of them agreed to make a perilous journey to the New World, where they would certainly face hardships but could live and worship God according to the dictates of their own consciences. On August 1st, 1620, the Mayflower set sail. It carried a total of 102 passengers, including 40 pilgrims led by William Bradford. On the journey, Bradford set up an agreement, a contract, that established just and equal laws for all members of the new community, irrespective of their religious beliefs. Where did the revolutionary ideas expressed in the Mayflower Compact come from? They came from the Bible. The Pilgrims were a people completely steeped in the lessons of the Old and New Testaments. They looked to the ancient Israelites for their example. And because of the biblical precedent set forth in Scripture, they never doubted that their experiment would work. But it was no pleasure cruise. The journey to the New World was a long and arduous one, and when the Pilgrims landed in New England in November, they found, according to Bradford's detailed journal, a cold, barren, desolate wilderness. There were no friends to...
What a loss that was when Rush passed away. God bless him and his family, his brother David, who's still alive, David's a remarkable person in his own right. And he does his family and his brother proud to this day. But that is our legacy. That's our inheritance. That's what we celebrate this Thursday together. This is a country of brave individuals who came here in cold, in an environment that was not hospitable at the time. And through their work and their determination and their faith and their love, they built this nation. And this nation is a Christian nation. People can get mad about it. The left can scream. They can say it's not true all they want. They can lie to themselves, but this is a Christian nation. It always has been. And those individuals came here because they wanted to flee persecution and be able to worship their God, Jesus Christ, as they believed. Freedom of religion, not freedom from religion. And of course, Rush goes on to describe the experiments in socialism that failed, a microcosm of the beauty and success of capitalism encouraging individuals to better themselves and improve themselves, rewarding an individual's hard work produces fruit for everyone. Limiting that, robbing from others, attacking the successful does not uplift anyone from poverty. This nation is a miracle, not a mistake. And we should contemplate that this weekend. You know, as Reagan said, freedom isn't passed down in the bloodstream. It has to be fought for by each subsequent generation. And as I approach my 39th birthday in February, as I have, been really just shaken by what happened to Charlie Kirk and thinking about his family, I am emboldened. I am broken down and rebuilt into somebody who really believes in this mission that we have as authentic Americans who want to be faithful to our origin story and faithful to our God as Christians. And we are activists. Christians are activists. We are called to be activists. And we should be proud of our heritage, proud of who we are, proud of our faith. And we should alert others to that pride. Shout it from the rooftops. Don't be timid. Don't let the secular left, who wants to lead people down a path to hell, promising utopia but delivering darkness. And it's no wonder why violence erupts on the left, because they're promised things that they're never going to get. They're promised light and all they get is darkness. And it's like a farmer who continues to plant in barren soil. When you don't get anything that grows, you're going to get more and more frustrated. And that's why the left is so volatile and violent, because they're following a false path. And it is our job and our duty to set them on the right path, to compassionately push back, to resist, to tell them the truth, whether they want to hear it or not. Because at the end of the day, what we're offering them is an out. We're offering them the pathway to actual joy and happiness, to fulfillment. And what the left is offering them is the opposite, while telling them that they're going to be happy. And they never are. And they're frustrated. And it's like Eric Swalwell. California has been decimated by Democrats for a generation now. And it's the Democrat Party's fault. And they only have themselves to blame in California for it. And yet Eric Swalwell comes in and says, I'm going to make sure that California does X, Y, and Z, that it's utopia, which one is an acknowledgement that this is a dumpster fire. And at the same time, he offers no new solutions. He offers the same tired, broken policies that led to this disaster in the first place. And remember, this is the tactic of the left. It's a Marxist tactic, a Saul Alinsky rules for radicals tactic. Create the problem and then present yourself, and your solution is the only one. So they create problems, then run against them and point the finger and blame someone else for them existing. And this is the whole vicious cycle of power, how they maintain it. But anyway, look, have so much fun with your family. I mean it sincerely. This time of the year speeds up so fast. We hit Thanksgiving, we hit Christmas, and then we hit New Year. And then it's hard to believe how the time passes. But I just want to say again, I'm grateful for you. Even the people that hate my guts. I love you especially. This is Jerome, your millennial minister of truth. God bless you all. And until next week.